I mean, I've already talked about this. I've went into this into detail, especially in one of my past videos. I don't understand why we cutting down trees and boxing people in and filling them full of toxic chemicals and embalming fluid and taking them as an actual resource from the ecosystem. We're taking ourselves out of the ecosystem. I think that, people should either be one, buried butt ass naked with a slit all the way down and a seed right on top. That way all our nutrients can feed a tree. We can grow forests from people. You can have a whole plot. If you're rich, you can start a forest. You have the redwoods of basils. I don't give a shit. I really don't. As long as you're helping the planet. But instead, we cutting down trees, building mausoleums, doing all this weird goth crap. I've already talked about this in detail. I swear, it's the weirdest stuff. I mean, like, at this point, we might as well just create a people chipper, like a wood chipper, and just be throwing dead bodies into it and just using that to just cover, like, big chunks of land, and then just start populating that with forests, trees, plants, wildlife, because I mean, it's time for us to give back. We don't fit into the ecosystem no more. All we do is create different types of polymers and elements and combine things that further our existence, but it's not about us. It was never about us. It was just about how we fit into the greater puzzle. We aren't the puzzle. We aren't the table. We just happen to be a screw in the table. Everyone talks about the planet, devastation, global disasters, climate control. If all of that happens and humanity dies, the earth doesn't die. It's gonna go on, even if it goes on without us. We need to learn how to live progressively with the earth in a positive manner versus fight death, because it's coming. So enjoy life, stop torturing others, stop with this old capitalism BS, and we need to just start helping everybody, each one teach one, so we can all live the best life. There's no reason that we should give all of our money, 53% of us should give every single dime to one individual so they can start doing every side mission they possibly want on Earth. That's not fair to the Earth. That's not fair to 53% of the people under that person. Come on. Get it together.
How to die, not as individuals, not as families, not as kingdoms, not as ideas. When they die, they don't decompose. They colonize the afterlife, trademark the corpse, and then send the bill to the living. Across Africa, Asia, the Pacific, and the Americas, death was never feared. It was prepared for. The Yoruba didn't view death as disappearance. They saw it as repositioning, a transition into the ancestral continuum, a return to spiritual responsibility. The Dine treated death as sacred disruption. The dead were respected with space and silence, not spectacle. The Maya practiced rituals of feeding and memory. The body returned to the land. The name was respoken into the future. The Tibetan sky burial gave the corpse back to the birds. The body was not owned. It was returned. Death was a release, not a debt. But Europe couldn't let go. They embalmed bodies to fake permanence. They buried kings under cathedrals so peasants could walk over their rot. They stole the mummified dead of Egypt and Peru and then put it behind glass, calling it education. They wrote wills that controlled land for centuries. They passed power through coffins, not consensus. In Europe, the body was never sacred. It was a vessel of shame. They wrote entire theological treatises on how to die correctly, not honorably, but obediently. They feared suicide, but built entire civilizations on mass death. They created the concept of a good death, and then attached it to military conquest, crusade, and martyrdom. So long as it served empire, death was noble. Otherwise, it was criminal, barbaric, or irrelevant. When plague hit Europe, they didn't turn inward for reflection. They blamed Jews, they blamed women, they blamed Eastern air. They burned people for bringing death, while never questioning the filth of their own cities, the church's control of medicine, or the elite's obsession with bleeding and leeching. Other civilizations built pyramids to align with the stars. Europeans built catacombs full of skulls and femurs. They didn't memorialize life. They stockpiled bones, arranged like Gothic art installations. And then they called others morbid. Where the Ashanti performed ancestral invocations, Europe wrote inheritance law. Where the Zulu conducted spirit cleansing, Europe began embalming in arsenic and lead, hoping to freeze the soul in place. They didn't mourn. They manipulated. They didn't remember. They marketed. And when their empires began to collapse, they collapsed violently, noisily, and vengefully. The Spanish Empire didn't leave the Americas with regret. They left with scorched earth, enslaved children, and a Bible held like a club. The British Empire didn't die with humility. They died on maps they drew themselves, and then blamed the post-colonial world for the chaos they engineered. They left behind museums filled with bones and artifacts they refused to return. Not even in death could they release what never belonged to them. The French didn't fade. They panicked. In Algeria, they mutilated corpses, raped women in mass, and then fled with documents in flames. They bulldozed archives, covered up mass graves, and flew the tricolor over the stolen dead. Europe doesn't grieve. Europe erases. And when the Nazi regime collapsed, its scientists weren't tried. They were hired. Its philosophies weren't discarded. They were absorbed into NATO, the CIA, corporate law, and Western medicine. Even fascism in Europe doesn't die. It rebrands. It puts on a suit. It files paperwork. It calls itself economic recovery. The US picked up the torch with Hiroshima, and now Silicon Valley billionaires are freezing their brains, injecting young blood, hoarding biopatents, and trying to cheat death like it's a copyright loophole. They don't want to die. They want to own the future, just like their ancestors wanted to own the land, the labor, and the sky. This is why European empires cling so hard to ruins. They obsess over stone, over monuments, over mausoleums, because the only thing they've ever built to last is grief with no closure. They don't believe in returning to the earth. They believe in haunting it, in leaving unfinished wars, unmarked graves, and legal disputes over who owns whose bones. They keep Sarki Bartman's body in a jar for 200 years. They keep Mari's skulls in universities. They keep Benin altars behind glass in European climate control. They keep native remains in research collections while building pipelines through their graveyards. They do not rest. They do not release. They do not reflect. They do not return. They only retain. So no, Europe has never known how to die gracefully, because dying gracefully requires dignity. It requires reverence. It requires understanding that you are not the end of the world, and they never believed that. To the European Empire, their death was everyone else's problem. If they fall, they'll take your waters, your seeds, your languages, your names, your memory. They'll take the very future with them, unless you learn how to bury them properly, because they never will.